Introducing GC Heat legend, pitcher, and utility master Caleb Ashley, and bench captain Isaiah Ashley. Today, presenting to you the GC Heat podcast. And we are going to be covering a wide range of topics today, ranging from the NFL to the MLB to the NBA. We're going to start off talking about the NFL Conference Championship games. First, the Titans and the Chiefs. And upon reviewing the tapes, I feel it's pretty safe to say that Derrick Henry is the best rusher in the NFL. He has clearly surpassed his contemporaries in Saquon Barkley, Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, and though he hardly bears mentioning, that fellow in Charlotte. We haven't seen this low of production from a running back since Adrian Peterson's 2012 season. Henry's playoff run this year is comparable to Larry Fitzgerald's 2008 season and run. Pair that with a suffocating defense, which has no stars, but is a cohesive unit that flies to the ball and takes the run away from offenses. And it's easy to see how the Titans got to this point after dethroning the Super Bowl champs and ending Lamar Jackson's MVP season. On the other side of the field, you've got the Kansas City Chiefs, one of the best offenses in NFL history. Patrick Mahomes, who many think will be the greatest passer of all time by the time he hangs it up, is accompanied by Tyreek Hill, the speedster, Sammy Watkins, another speedster, and Travis Kelce. You want to play zone defense? Too bad. The ball's going deep. You want to man them up? Either Hill or Kelsey's going to beat you. You want to contain all the receivers somehow? Patrick Mahomes may take off for 30 yards on you. This is the most balanced passing attack we have ever seen, exemplified by the fact that despite not scoring at all in the first quarter, they dropped 51 points on the Texans last week. Their downfall, though, is their defense. With the exception of Chris Jones and the Honey Badgers, they don't really have any playmakers. And will that affect them? In my opinion, no. The Titans' defense is suffocating, as I've already said, but they can't stop the Chiefs. I don't think Logan Ryan, Ty Smith, and Kevin Byard can keep up with Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, and DeMarcus Robinson. And while Rashawn Evans and Howard Landry III are amazing tacklers and run stoppers, they cannot stay with Kelce in coverage. The Chiefs' offense cannot be stopped by the Titans' defense. They are going to easily outscore them.
So my issue is I don't disagree. I am also predicting that the Kansas City Chiefs win the game. But I think that you haven't really thought about what the Titans may try to do against the Chiefs on offense and what they were able to do last week against Baltimore Ravens. You talk about how the Chiefs have had the best offense in the history of the NFL. I mean, I think a lot of people would say that the Ravens were even better this year, and the Titans for a lot of that game.
Offense, but continue.
Okay, best passing offense, whatever. And if you look at passing yards per game, you see that the Ravens have had more passing yards per game than the Chiefs. But continue. And the Titans were able to basically shut down that offense. And a lot of what they were able to do was they were able to keep Lamar Jackson in the pocket without having to commit to big old blitzes on every play. And they were able to keep people back in coverage, and we would also put pressure on them all at once. It was a pretty comprehensive game plan. I do think that Patrick Mahomes is a better passer, and that if you leave him back in the pocket all day, that he will eventually beat you. But I don't think that it's going to be quite as dominant as you're thinking. Right now, the Titans' defense is about as good as anyone we've seen in quite a while. Just go look at what they did with Lamar. That they put pressure on him without having to blitz, while being able to keep people downfield and able to keep people spying on him the whole time. And I also think that what you said about Derrick Henry is spot on for money. He's been dominant. I think he'll continue to be dominant. The Kansas City Chiefs aren't really a defensive powerhouse by any means. They have been better against the rush than they have been against the pass. But right now, I really don't think that they're going to be able to shut down Derrick Henry. And if they can't shut down Derrick Henry, what happens is they have to move more men up into the box. And that gives Ryan Tannehill more opportunities to especially make big plays, someone like A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, in play action. I think that you see Tennessee use a lot of play action and use it really effectively because of Kansas City defense, especially in the secondary, is not particularly good. I think the game will end up being in the mid to high 20s, maybe in the low 30s. I do think that the Chiefs will ultimately end up winning because of what you said about how good Mahomes is. But I think the Titans can stay with them. I think the Titans will do enough on defense to keep their offense in the game.
My main issue with what you said is this. What you described in Lamar Jackson being shut down, his passing yards were due to two things and being greater than Chiefs. One, Patrick Mahomes was hurt for 4 games or so this year. And two, Lamar Jackson was so feared as a rusher that they were able to take away that. And by taking away that, not being really afraid of him running that much while keeping him contained, he could not pass the ball as effectively. Patrick Mahomes, while an amazing rusher in his own right, very underrated, but when he needs to, he can, is not a running quarterback. I think his air raid style of offense goes directly against what the Titans have done the last 2 weeks.
I mean, I think we'll still be able to bring pressure. I mean, I agree with you to some extent. I'm not saying that I don't think that the Kansas City Chiefs were able to throw the ball. I do think that Mahomes is better than right now than either Brady or, for that matter, Lamar was in terms of passing the ball down the field. But I do think we'll be able to get pressure. I do think we'll be able to disrupt the Chiefs' plays. And when you talk about the deep balls to Watkins and Tyreek Hill, you have to have time for those to develop. And I think the Titans will throw some stuff at Mahomes, which will take away his time, but also not allow him to get outside of the pocket. I think they'll keep him contained for the most part.
The beauty of Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins, though, you need less time than everyone else does.
Well, right. And again, I do think that he'll probably hit a couple deep balls because that's how good he is right now. If you go look at some of those throws that he was making against the Texans,
unreal.
It's incredible, and I don't think that's going to stop against the Titans, who have a good pass defense, have probably even a top 10 pass defense, but I wouldn't say have one of the best pass defenses in terms of especially down the field coverage.
Well, we clearly disagree on this. I think the Chiefs are going to blow out the Titans. You think it's going to be a close game? Mainly.
I mean, I don't think you've been watching Derrick Henry closely enough. Derrick Henry right now has been good enough to keep the team in the game.
I've been watching Derrick Henry. Trust me, I am a fan of running the football. I'm not a lover of the passing attack in the modern NFL.
Well, okay, so question for you.
Go ahead.
In terms of blowing out the Titans, you're assuming that they get stopped, but Derrick Henry is getting stopped. How do you see the Chiefs containing, limiting, somehow preventing Derrick Henry from having another 150 plus?
Oh, I think he'll have another 150, 200 plus. I just don't think that offense is set up to score that many points. Like, I could see them getting to 35 conceivably, but I feel like if you give the Chiefs that many possessions with scoring 35 points and giving the ball back, they're going to get 50.
I mean, you don't think that – I think the Titans could be more efficient than you're thinking. The way the Titans play is that they eat the clock.
I know
that they have these big 8-minute possessions.
But the Chiefs can score in under a minute. That's the thing, too. The Chiefs do the opposite of that.
That makes sense. I do think the Chiefs will have probably a possession or two that plays out for what you're saying, and I think that will be why they win. But I think you're underrating how much of the clock the Titans can eat, how close they can keep the game. I mean, I think the way that you beat better teams in the playoffs a lot of the time is that you control the clock, that you keep their offense up the field, that you keep momentum, especially when you have to play on the road. And I think the Titans are really well set up to do that. I'm not saying that they will win, but I'm saying that they're set up about as well as you could be as a 6-seed underdog going on the road in the conference championship game.
And I agree with you somewhat. I'll say this, then we're going to move on. There's also the chance that the Titans have a bunch of 1-minute drives because no one can really tackle Derrick Henry on the Chiefs' defense. That's something else to think about. But those are our thoughts on the AFC Conference Championship games. And now we're going to transition to the Packers and the 49ers. And the Green Bay Packers have Aaron Rodgers. Normally, that's all you'd be able to say about the Packers. But this year is different. For the first time in what feels like forever, they have a real running back in Aaron Jones, whose stout body is capable of making defenders bounce off him on his way to the end zone. Once he gets inside the 5-yard line, you're not stopping him. If they're in the red zone, he's in the end zone. Then you've got Devontae Adams, who's one of the most underrated wide receivers in all of football because Aaron Rodgers is thrown to him. Pair that with the fact the Packers finally have a defense worthy enough to play with Aaron Rodgers, and it's easy to see how this team got to 13-3. On the other sideline, you've got the San Francisco 49ers, the best defensive team in football. I'm saying it better than the Patriots. I think that's clear by now, let alone of the 4 teams left. The new J.J. Watt is playing for them and Nick Bosa. Richard Sherman has returned to dominance. Dee Ford is back wanting to get even for his costly screw-up in the AFC Championship game last year. And there's not a single weakness on that defense. I don't think there's anyone you can pick on. Their worst player in their secondary is still rock solid and would start for every single other team. Then you've got their offense led by 2-time Super Bowl champion Jimmy Garoppolo, the best tight end in football, Emmanuel Sanders, and the running back tandem of Matt Breida and Tevin Coleman behind a stout offensive line. This is probably the more talented of the two games, in my opinion. And
I
thanks to
agree.
that talent, I'm going to say the 49ers beat out the Packers. I see no way the Packers can beat them for two reasons. One being the fact the Packers' inability to stop the deep ball. For example, you need to look at two games. One, the Dallas Cowboys matchup, where Dak Prescott scorched their secondary when they were in 3 or 1-man defense, and the 49ers game, in which the 49ers scored 37 points in 45 plays, picking them apart with the deep ball all game long. Number two, the Packers' offensive line is not what it used to be. They had to pay a bit of a price in that for that offensive line to get the defense as good as it is now. Normally, the O-line is the one thing that plays at a high level besides Aaron Rodgers. This year, they've been slipping up. They've been giving him more sacks, more pressures, and they've been forcing Aaron to get more mobile. Then you look at the San Francisco 49ers defensive line, and I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be on his back a lot, which is not a place he can win a game from. For the second time this year, I think the 49ers will suffocate the Packers offense.
I mean, I have a completely different take, and I think the narrative of this game has been constructed in such a way where everyone is picking the 49ers and thinking that they're going to win. And I looked at the line today. The line right now is 7.5 points for 49ers. That's you're saying that Aaron Rodgers won't keep the game within a touchdown. Is what
I
the line
think
is
it could
currently
be
saying.
easily be 14-point line. I'd still bet on the Niners, but continue.
Well, I think there's two issues of that. I think that narrative has been shaped because the 49ers absolutely dominated the Vikings last week. And I don't think that's a really – I think the Packers are better at play calling. What happened last week is the Vikings just did the same thing that they do every single game. And you can run the ball up the middle and call play action plays and call slants and out routes and be fine when you're playing the Detroit Lions. But when you're playing a good defense, you have to be creative. You have to be innovative. And I didn't see the Vikings doing that for the most part.
They certainly were not innovative.
I didn't see anything creative. I didn't see anything different. They ran the same old plays that they've been running all year against the team that was ready for them. So I think that game almost had as much to do with Vikings being incompetent on offense as it did on the 49ers being dominant on defense.
I'd certainly agree with you.
Secondly, I think the narrative about the Packers has been that they played a game against San Francisco early in the year and got absolutely destroyed. And I think it's kind of shaped the narrative more than it should have. If you go back and look at the Panthers' regular season losses, they lost 3 games total. They lost those 3 games by a total of 50 points. If you go look at the Vikings, they lost 6 games, and the Vikings lost their 6 games by a total of 40 points. So what that's telling you is that when the Packers lost, they got blown out. They got beat pretty badly. They had a game where they couldn't stop the Eagles on the ground. Another game where the Los Angeles Chargers got up by 20-plus points.
Yikes.
And then the game against the 49ers, both of their losses. So I don't really think that game is the best data point. I have faith in the Packers for a couple of different reasons. I think that Aaron Rodgers has somehow become underrated this year, that there's been all this complaining about the play calling, about the new coaching staff, about how he's not been being used correctly. And they're 13-3 and in the NFC Championship game, so I don't think there's really much that you can say compared to maybe 2-3 years ago when they were winning maybe only 10 games, but he was throwing so much. I think right now they have a more effective offense, and I think they're able to open it up. You talked about how he's going to be on his back all game. I think the stuff you said about Aaron Jones is going to limit that. They're going to be able to run the ball enough where the 49ers aren't going to be able to commit to one thing, aren't going to be able to predict plays. And I do think the Packers will use play action. I do think for Aaron Rodgers, you probably will see him scramble more than he usually does because the 49ers are so dominant in the middle that he will have to do things differently. But I do think Aaron Rodgers is one of the few QBs that I think can make plays from the pocket, and they can go and make plays while scrambling. You mentioned the defense and how the secondary was a weak spot. I would disagree. I think the secondary has been really strong all year. The run defense has had issues at times.
Don't misquote me here. I think the secondary is phenomenal in a lot of situations, primarily of which playing against teams like the Vikings who throw it short, but they are weak to the deep ball.
I disagree with that. If you talked about the Cowboys game, and your data point is that Dak Prescott threw for 460 yards. My data point is that he also threw 3 interceptions in that game. So I do think that if you're going to have Dak Prescott drop back and throw the ball as much as he did that game and go down the field as much as he did, that he may throw for 400-plus yards. Again, the 49ers don't even do that. That's not the 49ers offense at all.
Well,
But the Packers defense is good about making plays. We'll have I guarantee at least one interception against the 49ers, if not more.
I
And I
disagree
think
with
we'll
you
be.
that that's not what the 49ers do because, frankly, they've in the 2 moments or the 3 moments they've needed to perform that way and score a whole lot of points against real teams. They have. They aired it out against the Saints. They aired it out against the Packers. And in a must-win game against the LA Rams, they aired it out on them on December 22nd, 21st.
I mean, you say air it out, but it's not. It's like San Francisco has been a team that's been more focused on the run all year. They set up the passes. They set up Garoppolo. They run a lot of play action. They run a lot of plays where he scrambles and kind of fakes a run, and then he throws down the field. You look at the 49ers, they don't really have a dominant receiver. They have George Kittle, who's a really good guy in the middle of the field, but he's not really someone that's going to have a ton of deep balls. Their game is not downfield passing. Their game is pound the other team in the mouth with a run, and then have the other team creep up and then pass the ball. I think that their offense is built off of running, not off of passing. That's why they have the second most rushing yards in the NFL per game.
And I somewhat agree with you, but here's the thing. They do have Emmanuel Sanders, who is a deep ball guy, and I've already talked about I think their weak against the deep ball. All he needs is 2 or 3 deep catches to him or another guy like, say, Debo Samuel, and the game's been blown open.
I mean, you say that, but I don't really. Emmanuel Sanders seems to go back and forth where he occasionally has a game where he blows up and has 100+ yards, and then he has games where he goes 2 catches for 25. There's definitely a range of outcomes of him, and I don't think, like, when you're talking about Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't think that anyone really thinks of him as being someone that is a deep ball gunslinger type of quarterback. He's not like Dak Prescott. He's not like Patrick Mahomes. He's not at that level in terms of deep ball passing.
I feel you're underrating Jimmy Garoppolo a little bit, but I can see where you're
Well,
coming
he's a
from.
good quarterback, and he is really good in their system, and he can make the throws they need him to make. But I don't think that if you go away from the run that's been winning you games all year and rely on Jimmy Garoppolo beating you down the field, I think that's what the Packers would want, especially since the Packers are better in the secondary as opposed to their rush defense. I mean, their defensive line, excuse me.
We're just going to keep saying the same thing over and over again. I think it's going to be an air raid in the 49ers' favor. My brother here thinks that the Packers are going to suffocate their offense.
I didn't say that. I think every game will be in the 20s. I don't think it's going to be a 10-7 game or anything. I think that the Packers will be able to score enough, will be innovative enough, will take lessons from teams that have been able to score on the 49ers all year, and will understand that it's about getting outside the pocket some, but also establishing the run and giving yourself multiple options on any given play.
While I respect Aaron Rodgers, I respectfully disagree with you. I don't think they'll be able to get outside the pockets.
I think that's what the
But
game may come down to.
that may be. That might be. We'll have to wait and see. But moving on to another NFL topic, All-Pro linebacker Luke Kuechly announced earlier this week that he would be stepping away from football. And this is a great day for football, not because one of the best linebackers in the game is stepping away. No. It's because one of the best linebackers in the game is stepping away because it's what's best for his own health. Luke Kuechly suffered 2 massive concussions, the most recent of which leaving him out of action for 6 weeks, which is a lifetime in terms of the football season. With new information coming out every day about CTE and the negative effects it has on football players long term, paired with the fact middle linebacker is one of the most contacted positions in all of football, and I'm happy that he's stepping away for his own health. Obviously, the game will miss him, but it's what's best for him, and I respect the decision.
I think it's really good for him that he has realized that now is the time, that he is still seems to be very 100% mentally, hasn't had any long-lasting effects, was relatively healthy this year, and now he has a chance to go do whatever he wants. This is a guy that could easily be an NFL coach next year if he wanted to, somewhere as an assistant, and could easily be in a announcing booth somewhere. And there's other opportunities if he wants to go into business, if he wants to go back to, say, medical school. He has always opportunities available to him because of his NFL career and because of the type of player he is and the type of guy he is. He's a great guy, and I know for whatever he wants to do, that he'll be pretty dang good at it.
I know I'd want him defending my house. Great guy, brave move. Gabe and I both agree on that. Transitioning to the Panthers for a little bit, this leaves them in a very awkward spot. The one dependable player who they knew was going to be there year in and year out, being a force on defense, is gone. Now they're forced to move forward in one of three ways. Either they've got to re-sign Cam Newton, play with him next year, even though the fans have shunned him in favor of Kyle Allen after 2 weeks and slowly crawled their way back to him once they saw the true quarterback he was. Or they can try and draft one of the prospects in this year's draft, which, that's all right. I'm okay with that. Or 3, they can tank for Trevor Lawrence. None of these are great options. The Panthers are kind of stuck in limbo, and it's just not a great state of affairs in Charlotte. But on the bright side, you got the LSU offensive coordinator. I'm sure his talents will transition to the NFL great.
I mean, I think he's a really good coach, and I think that I would be interested to see if Cam Newton comes back. I mean, I don't think Allen is savable at this point, but I do think that Cam Newton was someone that's as good at calling for plays and designing an offense as Brady seems to be. That could be an interesting combination. I think right now that I would expect that Cam Newton plays fair again next year because of how bad Allen was down the stretch. But a lot of that, again, depends, like what you said about the draft and what direction the ownership wants to go in. If you want to try to compete next year, I think you have to keep Newton. If you're going to take a year off and rebuild, you may tank for Trevor. You may.
It's another 16
games. Oh, Justin Fields, for that matter.
Show.
Yeah, and you can see what you have. You can give the young guys a chance. They have a lot of young players that they could give a chance. Like the receivers are pretty young. Christian McCaffrey's pretty young. It would be a young team.
It'll be a young team. We are going to transition sports now, moving to the NBA, and we are going to discuss 5 of the teams who made big splash in free agency and where they are now.
I think that our listeners should be proud of us for we're able to count to 5.
Yeah, that is something which surprised both Cam and I when we were going over our notes. Counting to 5 is a big deal. # big trust and all that. But we're going to start with the Los Angeles Lakers. And the Lakers made a variety of moves this offseason, namely of which trading for Anthony Davis. And they sent away a lot of guys, Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, a bunch of their young pieces, and got possibly the best center / power forward in the game in return. In addition to him, they also signed Danny Green, kept Rajon Rondo, JaVale McGee, brought in DeMarcus Cousins to be a voice of veteran leadership, and retained Avery Bradley. And I think the Los Angeles Lakers are the best team in basketball. I'm sure the statistics agree with me. They're leading the West. They're only behind the Milwaukee Bucks in terms of total wins. And they've been blowing teams out night in and night out. Great offseason for them. I'm glad it's been working out, mainly because DeMarcus Cousins may finally get his ring.
So I think they've been amazing. That they most likely are going to end up as 1 seed. I have 2 issues. Number 1 is what exactly happens when LeBron is on the bench. Who creates offense? Where does that come from? That's been an issue. They do have a negative rating when he's been out. And in the playoffs, you want to be able to give him 5 or 6 minutes, maybe more, 10 minutes even, a game where he can sit out and you can at least stay even with AD on the out there. And that really hasn't happened. Secondly, it's going to be interesting to me what happens to the rotation because they seem to have kind of done what I would have done as an NBA GM and brought in a bunch of famous guys like Dwight Howard, Rajon Rondo, JaVale McGee. They have all these guys that have had significant minutes in the past, have been significant players in the past. And most of them seem to fit pretty well, especially like when someone is injured, Kyle Kuzma can step up. Dwight Howard can have a 15 and 14 type of night when someone's out. What happens in the playoffs? Which of those guys end up getting reduced minutes? Which of them don't play at all? And are teams able to key in and exploit the flaws of those guys? Like Rajon Rondo has really clear flaws. Dwight Howard obviously is not good at some aspects of basketball, as in switching on defense, and free throws. And it's just what happens to those, like JaVale McGee has a track record of having not so great moments. Like what happens in the playoffs when teams are able to focus in on those players as opposed to a regular season where pluses seem to outweigh the minuses. Can somebody exploit a matchup against a Rondo or a Dwight Howard?
I think you're right. There are holes on defense. I would say that in your first comment about LeBron being off the court, being a big detriment, it's been like that his entire career. Even when he was on the Miami Heat with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, they were sometimes in the negative some seasons when he was not on the court.
Well, he's not getting younger.
I know.
He's not going to be out there as much.
I I might want to disagree with you based off this season. He's had a phenomenal year and actually played some defense, which is something which surprised
Well,
me.
I mean, you begin to worry if he's going to wear down because he's no spring chicken.
I mean, yeah, that is an issue, but I feel like LeBron's been able to keep himself in good enough shape to be able to function in the playoffs at this level or higher, which is
I
all
mean,
they need.
I don't disagree with you. I think we're debating semantics to some extent. They're really good.
They're really good. Moving on to the other team in Los Angeles. The LA Clippers made quite the splash. They signed Kawhi Leonard, the marquee free agent of this offseason, and traded their entire future in order to get Paul George from the Oklahoma City Thunder, while not really losing anything besides Shea Gilchrist Alexander and keeping key pieces like Patrick Beverley.
Hey now, they lost to Nilo Gallinari.
Oh, excuse me. I also forgot Tyrone Wallace, the legend that is, waived from the team, a true shame. But they kept their key pieces, and they got two of the best players in the league. And it's been showing. I believe they are the 2 seed right now. And Kawhi Leonard taking load management nights off. That's to be expected. This is another definite win. I think a lot of people could have seen this coming. My real issue with it, though, you traded your entire future for Paul George. Him and Kawhi both have options that they could get out of the Clippers organization within 2 years. That could be disastrous if they both leave and the Clippers do not have their first-round draft picks. That could be very bad.
I mean, it won't be as bad if they win a championship. If they win a championship, so what if they leave? I mean, the
I'd
goal is to
agree
win a
with you, so
championship.
what, but that's a pretty big if.
So no, I think the Clippers have been actually really enough a little bit underrated. I looked at the standings right now; they're tied for third place, and they're kind of in a mess with 4 or 5 other teams, somewhere between 2 and 6. And like you probably saw these comments, Kendrick Perkins came out in the last week or so and talked about how the Clippers really needed someone down low. They needed a big old center to step in and fill the void.
I wonder why Kendrick Perkins, of all people,
Kendrick,
said that.
like Kendrick Perkins was really the reason why the Celtics won the championship. They would have been really. You can get rid of KG and they would have been fine, but they needed Kendrick Perkins.
They needed Kendrick Perkins, a non-biased source who totally never played with LeBron.
Well, and it's been, I think, a lot of commentary that's not been quite as direct as that, but it's been, oh, why aren't they in second place? And it's pretty obvious. It's because the load management thing with Kawhi, and hopefully that he doesn't have. Hopefully Kawhi doesn't have a serious, long-lasting knee injury. If he's going to be healthy by the playoffs, and Paul George is going to be healthy by the playoffs, those guys will play together a lot more than they have. When they have played together, they've been really effective. That team has beat the Lakers twice. We're 2-0 against the Lakers. That team, I think, has decent matchups against the Lakers. That team has a chance, and I think the criticism of them for not being quite as good as people expected doesn't take into account their strategy and what they're trying to get to for the playoffs as opposed to the regular season.
I certainly appreciate that they are trying to play for the playoffs, but I think overall I would take LeBron James over Kawhi Leonard, but it's very close at this point. I take Anthony Davis over Paul George. That's not close. And I think that the benches of both teams are very comparable. I know the strength of the Clippers is their bench in Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell, but I just don't think it matches up with the depth the Lakers have. They made great moves, but I just don't know if those moves were enough.
I disagree with that because I think that the two guys you just mentioned on the Clippers would be the Lakers, but both be the Lakers' third best player. The Lakers do have depth, but in the playoffs, those benches end up getting shortened down, and it's more about who the 7 or 8, 9, whatever. It's not who your 10th player is. And I think the Clippers have the advantage.
I get it that, but at the same time, though, Jared Dudley, who's the 14th or 15th man on the Lakers bench, played meaningful minutes in last year's playoffs and actually had some good matchups against Ben Simmons. It's not like there's a bunch of schleps on this team. There are real players all the way down that bench, a lot of which were acquired in free agency.
And most of which won't be playing significant, if any, minutes in the playoffs.
I get it. I think they'll play some minutes. I think they'll make a difference. But you and me are going to go back and forth over semantics again. So we're going to mosey on over to the Eastern Conference. And the Boston Celtics.
Are we moseying?
We're moseying on over. Back on East, Redneck, I tell you that. And the Boston Celtics made quite the splash with acquiring Kemba Walker, Cardiac Kemba, and getting rid of diva superstar Antonio Brown. Quite the offseason.
I'm sorry, what? I don't think cardiac Kimba. I don't think that's a thing, Isaiah.
Cardiac Kimba's a thing, man. Don't be a hater. But they
He
got
was
rid
in
of
Charlotte.
Kyrie
Like, when did he
Irving.
ever have any cardiac moments? He was a Charlotte Hornet.
Okay, you forget the joys of watching him on the Huskies.
This is fair.
This is very fair. But in addition, the Celtics also lost Al Horford, a good center, sometimes great, sometimes Been an all-star, but getting older. Lost him to the 76ers, one of their big rivals, and have replaced that hole by committee, getting guys like Enes Kanter, Taco Fall, other people whose names aren't as
Taco Fall
entertaining
does
as
not play in
exciting.
close games. Let's not talk about Taco Fall.
I like talking about Taco Fall. But they have gotten a lot of depth at that position despite losing their best player at it.
I mean, my question with Celtics, I have one question. It's who in the playoffs is going to be their alpha male? Who is going to have the ball at the end of games? Is it going to be Kemba or is it going to be someone else? They have Jaylen Brown having a breakout. They have Jason Tatum, who really likes to shoot. They have at least those three guys I think could all make a case. I mean, if Gordon Hayward's healthy, that's another guy that has been the best player on a team before. And the
Not a
question
good
becomes,
team,
what
but
happens? But Jazz won 50 games with him being the best player. They were pretty good. But no, I do think that it becomes an issue in the playoffs in terms of who is the alpha. It probably should be Kemba. I just don't know if I really think that Kemba as an alpha is going to be as good as, say, Embiid
or
definitely
Kyrie.
Giannis, or even Kyrie.
I think Kyrie's definitely more of a manly man. They also face the fact that two of the teams they're going against are the two of the best teams in the paint. Joel Embiid and Al Horford on the 76ers, plus a bunch of 6'10 guys at every other position. Or you've got Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Greek freak going in the paint every time and scoring at will. And I'm sorry, but good old Enes Kanter and whoever else you stick out there aren't going to be able to stop that.
No, I mean, I think I agree. I think we said all we need to say about the Celtics.
We both think they may have got slightly better due to getting rid of Kyrie, but at the same time, they're not going to make much noise.
I mean, they could win a series depending on what the matchup is, but I don't really see them.
Particularly,
they could even get to the conference finals, but I think at some point they're going to run into a team that they just can't beat.
They're going to run into a monster in the paint. Transitioning to the surprise of the Eastern Conference, the Miami Heat are really freaking good, and no one saw this coming. I thought they may sneak in and be like a fifth seed or lower, but with Jimmy Butler on this team, oh man. He was a big acquisition. They also drafted Tyler Hero. Didn't really lose anything besides Hassan Whiteside, who had already been known as very unhappy in the situation. But this is a surprisingly good team. Mainly due to the signing of Jimmy Butler and the drafting of Kyle Hero and the breakout of Bam.
If you had told me they were going to get nothing from Justice Winslow or Dion Waiters and still be in this position, I would have been absolutely shocked. I think the underrated part of the Heat is just how good a coach Eric Spoelstra is. That he has really built his team in Jimmy Butler's image, and he has guys that play really well with Jimmy Butler, and that it just flows really well. It's a team that tries really hard, but gives 100% effort on defense, has a good offense, has multiple guys that can shoot, multiple guys that can pass. Very deep, very complete team. I don't know if they're going to come out of the East by any means, but I think they've overachieved, and I think that they have set themselves up as being a really attractive destination next time a superstar level player wants out. Imagine having Jimmy, Bam, and then someone else.
That'd be quite a team. Real. The way you just described them, if I had never seen the Miami Heat play, I'd assume they had about 15 white guys on the team. That was how you just described them.
I mean, they have several. They have I think, probably 4 or 5 that are in the rotation.
And those guys are very effective. The Miami Heat, I could see them coming out of the East. I don't know how they'll match up against the two top dogs, but we'll have to wait and see on that. And our final free agent team, the team that surprised everyone even more than the Miami Heat, the Oklahoma City Thunder are a playoff team in the Western Conference. And neither Cave and I knows how that's happening. Chris Paul has revived his career after getting traded for Russell Westbrook, and it has worked out great for him there. Pair that with Dennis Schroeder's phenomenal work off the bench, also at point guard, Steven Adams taking on a new level of talent, and the new acquisition, whose name I struggle with sometimes, but God help me, I'm going to try. Take over, Caleb. Shea Gilchrist Alexander.
I'm proud of you. Yeah, the two guys they brought in from the Clippers have both been really big. Gallinari has been a great shooter from outside. Has given them what they need in terms of what he does from that. And then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been really good. I believe he's been starting with Chris Paul, hasn't he?
Yes,
He's
Shago
he
Chris
that
Alexander is.
compliment has been really effective. And I think if you're an Oklahoma City Thunder fan, you have to be happy about this. You maybe were expecting them to end up being able to trade Chris Paul and try to get younger and better, and they may still end up doing that. But I think right now, as a Thunder fan, you should just have fun. Realize that your team will probably get into the playoffs and will probably get beat pretty solidly by the 2 seed, but it's still a fun team, and it could give the 2 seed some issues with Chris Paul looking as good as he has.
I'd certainly agree with you. Something else of significant note, which I haven't brought up yet, the Oklahoma City Thunder over the next few years have 15 first-round picks and are still competing for a playoff spot. That doesn't make any sense. They have tanked the right way.
I mean, they've kind of, I feel like, at some level, done what the Celtics did 4 or 5 years ago, where they able to have good young players and also have an absolute metric ton of draft picks, and we'll see what happens.
We will have to wait and see. Could be a very exciting team 4 or 5 years down the line. But switching sports again, I am inept at most things baseball, so I'm going to let Caleb take over for this one.
Thank you, Isaiah. We're going to begin by talking about the Houston Astros and their cheating scandal. I don't really think that either Isaiah or I really wants to talk about sign stealing and cheating, but given how big a news story this has been the last couple of days, I think we decided that this needed to be talked about, needed to be discussed. So a little bit of background. The Astros won the World Series in 2017 and were aided partially by electronic sign stealing, where they were relaying signs from the technology to the players on the field using a complicated
Trash
system that sometimes
cans.
involved banging on a trash can.
A
Um,
very complicated system.
and the Major League Baseball obviously doesn't really approve of this behavior and launched an investigation into the Astros and what they had been doing. They announced the outcome of the investigation, and what baseball decided to do was to suspend the Astros manager and general manager each for a year, not suspend any players. And Commissioner Rob Manfred, his basic logic was that it's really difficult to hold players accountable. It's really difficult to get that knowledge. And a lot of the players are on different teams now. And then he said that the owner, Jim Crane, had not been involved at all and didn't know what was going on. So he basically got off with a fine and nothing else. Isaiah, what are your thoughts on those suspensions? Were you happy with what happened? Were you happy that the Astros decided to fire both Hinch and their general manager after the suspensions came out? Or do you think that there should have been more done by baseball,
Sign
either against the
stealing.
players or against the owners?
Sign stealing has been a
Owner.
part of baseball as long as it's been around. But back in the 1800s, when the game was first starting off, I don't think cameras got involved too often. There is a certain amount of skill required to be able to get on base, be in a position to see it, and then steal the signs. That takes skill. That takes effort. That's hard to do. It's hard to get to second base in the MLB. What's easy to do is put a camera up in center field and take a gander at the catcher's hand every time he sticks it down. That is a very unfair advantage the Houston Astros had. And the banging on trash cans thing, while hilarious, that shows player involvement. And while
Well,
this
there's
is a
definitely player involvement.
definitely player involvement, player malicious
Oh,
actions
yeah.
by players,
100%.
100% malicious. And this is not the first time technology has been used to cheat this sort of way. There was an incident with a smartwatch in 2016, 2017 with the Red Sox. But this is by far the most egregious. And this is a groundbreaking case. And because it is a groundbreaking case, I think the MLB needs to take groundbreaking steps in punishing them. I agree. Suspend the manager, suspend the GM. I'm very happy with that. That should happen. I think certain star players should also face suspensions. Maybe for a whole year, maybe for half season, maybe for only a week. But a message needs to be sent. You can't do this. You cannot take cameras and film other people's signs from center field. That's an unfair advantage. If you want to steal signs, fine. Do it the old-fashioned way. Don't get technology involved in the beautiful game of baseball.
I think that suspending players, well, it makes a lot of sense, would have been really difficult in practice and would have. I think Rob Manfred's basic position behind the scenes was probably something along the lines of, okay, it's really difficult to figure out who the players set, which players set this up, because it's not. I mean, everybody benefited, But there's definitely particular players that were really instrumental to this, like maybe Carlos Beltran, for example, and some of it's been mentioned as
Springer,
being.
maybe.
Well, I don't know if there's been evidence of that, but I think Carlos Beltran was actually named in some of the documents. But regardless, that hasn't been particularly clear. And then it's like you just don't want to deal with the suspensions. You don't want to deal with the appeal process. You don't want to deal with the negative publicity that that's going to get. And so I do get what you're saying. And I think ideally you would figure out who is most involved and suspend most players. But that's really difficult to do in reality.
I mean, I'd even consider making him forfeit a few games. I think it was pretty egregious. There's also the loss of draft picks.
I don't think vacating. Yeah, draft picks is a better penalty in my mind.
At the same time, though, it's a 28th to 30th overall pick every year. That's not that big a loss.
I mean, a lot of draft picks is if they lose those two draft picks, they also lose signing money out of the pool, so that they have less money they can spend on the draft. Like not having a first and second round draft pick probably will maybe even cripple the Astros next couple of drafts, not because of the picks themselves, because of the money.
At the same time, though, if you don't have those two picks, I may be talking out my posterior here, but you're not spending as much money either.
Well, they don't care about. They have a pool. You have a pool of money that you can spend on the draft.
Okay, I see.
Moving on. So we wanted to talk about something a little bit more positive. Talk a little bit about free agency. After years of having free agency be really slow and having nothing happen, this offseason has been really cool, really fun if you're a baseball fan. A lot of guys signed really quickly. You saw guys like Garrett Cole, Anthony Rendon, Steven Strasburg get gigantic contracts that they well deserved. So Zay and I wanted to talk a little bit about who we think the best signing has been of the offseason. So I'm going to go a little bit out of left field and say that the Chicago White Sox signing Yasmani Grandal to a 4-year, approximately $70 million contract was the best signing for a couple of reasons. Yasmani Grandal has been one of the best 2 or 3 catches in baseball the last couple of years. He solidly is going to hit 250, 260, 25 to 30 home runs, and play really good defense and walk a little bit. And right now in baseball, there's not very many good catches out there. If you want to get a good catcher, you have to either draft someone and get lucky, or develop someone, or sign someone as a free agent. And it does seem like a lot of money for a guy that's like 31. But I think it's worth it because the White Sox are right now transitioning from being a team that was consistently losing 90 to 100 games. And they're moving towards being the team that wants to contend, that wants to win the division. That's why they signed Dallas Keuchel. That's why they signed the top prospect, Luis Robert, to a contract so he could begin the season in the big leagues in 2020. That team is trying to contend, and what you need to contend with a bunch of young pitchers is a veteran catcher that is known around the game for his reputation on defense. So I think that was a really good signing and a step in the right direction for Chicago. What do you think, Isaiah? What is your best signing?
I'm going to quickly address that. You made the 2 big points I would use to disagree. He's a catcher, and he's 31. And I know you talked about the White Sox trying to contend with young pitchers. I think most people would agree they're not there yet. And Yasmani's not getting any younger. And by the time they are there, I think some of that defensive prowess and certainly some of that the plate prowess is going to slip off.
Well, 2 things. I think that they have been bad for long enough where they needed to commit to winning right now. And that's why they signed someone like Keuchel, who is older, someone like Jose Abreu, who's also a little bit older. I think they want to try to win in 2020, and I think we see an opening in that division. I think the advanced analytics show that the Twins probably overachieved, and God only knows what the Indians are doing. So I think the White Sox see that they have a path to the playoffs. And I think the thing about Grandal is you're right. He's a catcher and he's old, but he's good enough hitting-wise. Well, he's one of the few catchers that I think could probably move off position, even move to first base, move to DH, and probably still be valuable.
Yeah, the Twins overachieved, so they decided to go out there and get Josh Donaldson. He is not my favorite move of the offseason. My favorite move is Anthony Rendon departing the World Series champion Washington Nationals and signing with the Angels. And it feels like the Angels are finally making a move to surround Mike Trout with meaningful talent. First, they go out there and draft Shohei Ohtani. I think I'm saying that right. Who is a phenomenal prospect, both batting and pitching. Now they've got Rendon in there. It's starting to feel like that the Angels are maybe one piece away, a solid member of the bullpen away from being able to compete for a divisional championship, maybe even a World Series with the best player in baseball.
Hey, Isaiah, name me an Angels starting pitcher.
That is an issue, Cab. I'm not going to lie to you. I'd say, gosh, Jamie Barea, is he still there?
You struggled for that one. He is still there and was not particularly good last year.
And is Sandoval still there?
Um, they do have Sandoval, Patrick Sandoval, not Pablo.
Yeah, there's a slight difference between those two.
And they did sign Dad's favorite pitcher, Julio Chiron.
Oh boy, an old Julio. But I get they're
They need
one piece
pitching.
away, but they've got Rendon for a while. I don't think Trout's going anywhere. Shohei is going to be really, really good. You look at some of their other guys, like Justin Upton, David Fletcher, real pieces. And I think they're going to be able to contend in just one or two moves with the bullpen, which could come during the trade deadline, could come next offseason. I don't know.
I have a serious question for you.
Yes.
Are you sitting there reading to me the Angels roster? Because you so far have mentioned to me Sandoval, Jamie Barea, and David Fletcher. Three guys I don't think you knew existed before today.
I think I owned Fletcher for a meaningful bit of time on the fantasy team. I'm not totally sure about the pitcher. I did actually do some research to see how terrible they were. Is Shohei still technically a pitcher?
Yeah, he will. I don't want to. I think he's supposed to maybe come back at some point next year and pitch. I don't know what the status with his.
But regardless,
health
we're getting
issues
off
are.
topic.
Yeah.
Rendon is almost always in the MVP discussion. That will be hurt by the fact he's playing on the same team as the best player in baseball in a different conference. But he's a phenomenal hitter, top 10, maybe top 5 in the league, year in and year out. And I think they're going the Barry Bonds. And who's the white guy Barry Bonds played with for a while?
Jeff Kent.
Yeah, Jeff Kent. They're going Barry Bonds, Jeff Kent approach with Trout and him.
I agree. I think Anthony Rendon was a great signing, and I'm going to transition us into our final topic of the night. And as you can tell, Isaiah and I like to have fun. We're not really the most serious podcast, but we want to talk about something a little bit more serious and try to have like a slightly more nuanced discussion. And we'll talk again, moving back to the NFL. So the Washington Post, last week or so, released a really interesting article about African American head coaches in the NFL. And how it seems to be that the Rooney Rule that was imposed back in 2003, which required teams to interview at least one minority coach before hiring anyone, has been a failure. That there are the same number of minority head coaches today as there were when the NFL decided to enact the Rooney Rule in 2003. And the article talks a lot about that. And it talks about a lot of the criticisms that are often made of the process. Like, for example, think about what the Raiders did with John Gruden, that they had basically decided to hire him and they had to go sit down and give an interview to someone that was a minority coach. A lot of times the Rooney Rule becomes tokenism, and that a lot of criticisms of African-American head of coordinators are not fair. Like, take the gentleman for the Chiefs, Eric, I'm going to butcher his last name, Eric Bieniemy. And a lot of the criticisms have been, oh, well, he doesn't call plays, at least not extensively. If you go back and look at Doug Peterson and Matt Nagy, each of them had less than 4 seasons worth of play calling before they got their jobs. So it seems to be that there's a double standard that applies to black coaches and white coaches. And the Washington Post story talks about that. Like, it's the whole thing with the Cleveland Browns interviewing this guy and hiring this guy from the Vikings that hasn't had a ton of success. That doesn't seem to be a particularly creative play caller who got shut down by the 49ers, as opposed to the guy that was instrumental to the Chiefs scoring 50 against the Houston Texans
in 3 quarters.
And I think, to me, reading the Washington Post story, and obviously all these quotes were anonymous because these coaches don't want to go on the record and jeopardize any future chances they may have by calling out the NFL. And that is another issue that I don't think that people are particularly comfortable going on the record within the league and being honest about what's happening and what's going on. But I think the quote to me that really got me at the end was one of these coaches said that America doesn't want to see a black man as the face of a franchise. And it just kind of shows you that these guys are really feeling dispirited by what's happening, that they feel like they're not getting the opportunities. And if you look at the state of the NFL, I can't disagree with them. Thoughts?
My thoughts are this. I'd agree with you on a lot of the stuff you said. Real quickly, I'm not disagreeing with what the last fellow you quoted said, but I'd say that unlike college, the players are the face of the franchise. But you're absolutely right. The idea that having a quota that you have to interview a black coach that in and of itself is a stupid rule. That's not going to make any changes. That's just going to lead people on who shouldn't be forced to sit down for an interview, which they know and the teams know that they aren't going to get. But
Like
the reason,
take the Panthers. Like their interim coach. Like, was there any way that he was ever getting that job?
absolutely not.
And was it really fair to him to go act like he was a serious candidate and interview him?
Absolutely not. You kind of have to interview me as a head coach. I don't know if that's the best example, but the NFL is the teams are primarily owned by a bunch of old, rich white men. As we can see through American history, that group tends to be a tad bit racist. And as long as that is the case, which unfortunately I think it's going to be for another 15 to 20 years until some of these guys start dying off and leaving the teams in more progressive hands, the NFL is going to be stuck like this with this ugly, ugly habit of not
Let me
hiring African
let
American
me
coaches.
let me jump on that and say that a lot of times I don't think it's like, and the Washington Post article mostly doesn't make this claim either. It's not that it's intentional racism as much as it's a lot of times when you have two coach candidates, one of them is black, one of them is white, and then the white candidate gets the job, and then other coaches or people in the organization ask why that happened. The answer is often, I was more comfortable with the white guy. That he was better in the interview. That he really, and I think it's a little bit silly because again, when you're hiring a coach, I don't really think it matters if he gets along with the owner. I'd much rather have a coach that I fight with every day, but it's really good for players as opposed to vice versa.
And what
So
you
I do
say,
think that's a flawed process.
I think that in and of itself is an example of discrimination. I know you say, oh, it's something more subtle like that, but that is racism, what you just described. And I don't know how the NFL can fix this. I don't think anyone really knows if the NFL can fix this. But the thing which I dislike, I think you dislike too, it doesn't seem like the NFL is really doing anything serious about fixing it.
No, I think my issue with the NFL has always been that they take as long as is possible to address something like this, whether or not it's domestic violence, whether or not it's for concussion issues. They may eventually address it and do a good job of doing so, but not necessarily even a good job. They just do something. But usually it takes multiple incidents and some kind of movement, some kind of outside movement, whether or not it's a movie about concussions, whether or not it's the Ray Rice video leaking out. It takes a big moment, an inflection point of some kind, for the NFL to take action, for the NFL to improve itself.
Hopefully, this Washington Post article is the moment. I don't know if it can be, but I hope it at least starts a conversation, and that moment gets closer and closer. If that's how it's
I think
be.
I think of this type of criticism has been out there for years. I don't think this article is anything different than has been said for the last couple of years. I think it's got more obvious now because you're down to the same number now as you had in 2003. But I really don't think this criticism is new. I don't think this article is really that new. It's just part of the trend, part of the continuation
I disagree
of this problem.
I know you don't really watch that much ESPN, but there has been some discussion about this on ESPN, why more black head coaches aren't getting hired. And I wasn't really informed on this either until you sent me that article. Like, I found out about this.
Okay, that's fair.
Detail.
I hope you're right.
People are finding out about it.
I hope that you are right. I would really like to think that people are paying attention, but ESPN is talking about it and it's becoming an issue.
But ending on that pleasant note, that has been the GC Heat podcast. Please let us know what you think. Any comments, likes, subscriptions, much appreciated.
We would love to get up to like 3 or 4 subscribers. That's the goal.
That's the
goal.
And
if you happen to hit the like button by accident, we wouldn't be mad.
3 or 4 subscribers to go to the 3 or 4 hits the GC Heat had all year.
Hey now.
All right, folks. That's all.